Hello and welcome to Reportage. I am Danish bin Nabi. I am joined by Swedish political science Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed, a well-known authority on the history of Indian subcontinent, what circumstances led to the partition of the subcontinent, and what role the key players like Jinnah, Nehru and Patel played during those crucial years are some questions that I shall ask Professor Ishtiaq. Professor Ishtiaq, kindly help me in understanding the role Jinnah played in the Indian subcontinent. Because in 1916 he was called the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity, yet in 1940 he passed a resolution in Lahore calling for a separate state for the Indian Muslims. What actually happened and what changed Jinnah in these 24 years of his political career?
Thank you very much. This is the key question about Jinnah. How did a man celebrated as the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity ended up demanding Pakistan? Quite simply, I think the explanation is that Jinnah Sahab by nature was a leadership person. And when he joined politics in 1905 or 1906, already he became very prominent in the Indian National Congress and quickly attracted the attention of people as a competent person who could speak very good English, who was a lawyer and committed to the unity of India and for Indian nationalism. And this sort of mindset or this type of commitment of Jinnah reached its highest point in 1916 when, with the help of both the Muslim League, which had been founded in 1906, let me point out that when the Muslim League was founded in 1906, Jinnah Sahab condemned it as a divisive organization. And so now, by that time in 1913, he had joined the Muslim League on the instruction of the Congress. The Congress wanted Muslims and Hindus together to work for the self-rule, ultimately, let's say, leading to the freedom of India. Okay, 1916, he is able to convince both these two parties to support the Lucknow Pact. The Lucknow Pact was actually a pact which massively gave over-representation to the Muslims of the Hindu majority provinces, or let's say the Muslim minority provinces. But on the other hand, in the two Muslim majority provinces of Punjab and Bengal, Punjab at that time was 56% Muslim. Their number representation was reduced to 50. And in Bengal, which because of the poverty of Muslims of Bengal, although they were 52%, previously they had only 10% representation. This was increased to 40. But still less than 52, okay? On the Indian National Congress and Muslim League also agreed that 1/3 representation in the Central Assembly will be given to Muslims, whereas the Muslim population at that time in 1916 was less than 25% for the whole of India. So once again, over-representation. Thirdly, the Muslims were also granted separate electorates, which meant that Muslims would elect Muslims. Muslim voters elected Muslim candidates. So all this was granted, and we have to remember that this must have been done in very good faith, because this was against the Congress ideology. They agreed. The Muslim League also agreed. Some of the followers of Sir Sayyid, the Sir Sayyid was the first Muslim leader in the middle of the 19th century. He had told the Muslims to keep away from the Congress. when the Congress was formed in 1885.
85.
He said, we don't, yeah, 1885. So now, some people who were still followers of Sayyid, they started objecting that, look, this Lucknow Pact, despite all the concessions to the Muslims, will actually play into the hands of the Hindus. And I have recorded a statement of Jinnah Sahab saying that this is absurd. How can the Hindus, who know that Muslims are a very important majority with majorities in northwestern and northeastern India, would antagonize the Muslims and use their majority against the Muslims? So this is just a figment of the imagination. Now the question is, what makes Jinnah turn against all this? Well, a number of things. First of all, Jinnah Sahab never accepted being leader number 2, wherever he was. In whatever party, when he had now come to the top, he wanted to be leader number 1. And 1916 Lucknow Pact was indication that he was the leader who brought these two parties together. Okay. But Mahatma Gandhi comes from South Africa in 1915. Gandhi ji and Quaid-e-Azam were both Gujaratis. Apparently, their villages were not far from each other. Okay.
Then was it Jinnah's ego that led to the partition? Because he couldn't accept number 2.
Yeah. Yes. I'm just going to give you that background. It was his ego, no doubt. Absolutely no doubt.
Jinnah's ego led to the partition of Indian subcontinent. His ego led to the creation of Pakistan. Am I right?
In a way, that is an oversimplification because it is far more complicated. But Jinnah as a leader, as I said, could not accept that he would be leader number 2, and Gandhi ji had become leader number 1 after 1917. Simple. So on a personal level, this is true. But then there are many political events which complicated the demand which led to Pakistan. So we can say personal level, yes, absolutely right. Jinnah would not accept second fiddle, that is leader number 2 position. Gandhi ji had captured leadership number 1 by supporting the Khilafat movement and going out for civil disobedience and non-cooperation and so on. And Jinnah couldn't accept it. Jinnah wanted to do this slowly through constitutional protest and not mass agitation.
So in early 1930s, Jinnah had gone back to England and was practicing law. Who was actually the main man? Who was that individual that got hold of Jinnah and got him back to on the Indian political landscape?
Well, there is a dispute about it. 2 persons are reported to have been very, very active in this. One is Nawabzada Liaquat Ali Khan, who became later Prime Minister of Pakistan. The second person very much mentioned in Pakistan, especially in Punjab, is Allama Iqbal. But you know, the Qadiani group claims that their Maulvi in London was also was able to convince Jinnah to come back to the Indian subcontinent to lead Muslims. Of the first 2, we know that both have tried. The third is a claim I thought I should just mention. But either or both, Iqbal and Liaquat Ali Khan, definitely.
So let's come to 1937 general elections. After the elections, had Congress agreed for the power sharing with Muslim League, do you think the fate of subcontinent would have been entirely different?
That's a very good question. Let me put you both positions. According to earlier literature, and which many people still think is reliable, not all over India, but in UP, there was some sort of gentleman's agreement between Muslim Leaguers and the Congress that whosoever wins the election, whatever the result, here we will form a coalition government. But once the elections were held and the Muslim League was routed, it didn't get any major representation, especially in the Muslim majority provinces of northwestern India. That the Congress said that no, the Muslim League doesn't represent the Muslims of India. So if you want to be considered for a ministership, you must resign from the Muslim League and join the Congress. Now, some people have noted it that this was the case. But now some Indian historians, have said it and they challenged me. They said there was never any such agreement. But once the elections were held and the Muslim League had lost out, then the Congress was under no obligation to form a coalition government with a party which didn't have the support of the Muslims. I think it's good we present both positions. The net result was that in July 1937, Jinnah Sahab then made an appeal that we tried to form coalition governments, but the Congress refused. So now we are going to go our own way. And, Nehru even said there are two powers in India, the British and the Congress. Jinnah Sahab said, no, four powers. The British, the Indian National Congress, the All India Muslim League, and the princely states. So he made it four. Anyhow, Congress ministries were formed and they ruled for 2 years. When I've looked at the record shows that these ministries were not against Muslims in any sense of the word. This is all propaganda which the Muslim League carried out because the Viceroy of India, who was against Congress, the British governors who were against Congress, they all say that there is no evidence that the Congress ministries were against the Muslim living in those provinces. But, this caught the fancy of the people. Jinnah Sahab is on record saying that if we let the Congress come into power in the whole of India, in 1936, Nehru has even declared that we will abolish Zimidari system and we will recast India in the framework of the Soviet Union. So all this thing had created, great insecurity among the landowning classes. Anyhow, so Jinnah Sahab said that in the United India under Congress, Hindu Raj will come, Islam will be annihilated, yani Islam would cease to exist, and Muslims will be wiped out. They also will cease to exist. And this propaganda caught up in 1940. Then Jinnah Sahab demanded
a separate homeland.
Yeah. Sorry?
And he demanded a separate homeland in 1940. So the period from 37 to 45 is of vital importance because 37 Muslim League doesn't have any seat, and by 45 46 they win all the Muslim seats all around. But 45 46 another very important development takes place. That's the cabinet mission plan. The thing the historians and what I have gathered or read is that Jinnah had accepted the cabinet mission plan. Do you think that Nehru or Sardar Patel scuttled that?
No, I think this is, if you go through my book, I've challenged it, and on the basis of going through the volume, I think it's volume 7, the cabinet mission plan of the British documents called the transfer of power. And I've shown this is not the case. Jinnah Sahab was insistent that he wanted Pakistan. Congress wanted India to remain united. On the 4th of October 1946, when Jinnah Sahab met the Congress delegation, 3 ministers from England, they told him that, Mr. Jinnah, look, unless you can show us that East and West Pakistan would be defensible, yani in military sense, you leave us no choice but to leave India united, yani under Congress. And Jinnah, I think, then realized that either he accept the cabinet mission plan or India is going to be left to the Congress. So then, on the 6th of June, he suddenly told the Muslim Leaguers, look, we still want Pakistan, but we don't get it tomorrow. We'll get it ultimately. So we accept the cabinet mission plan now and continue working towards Pakistan. Nehru and Patel are blamed, I think, unfairly, because during this time there was an interim government and the Muslim League joined the interim government. But you and I know, you have the Kashmir Assembly. In the assembly, if you form the government, the ministers should work together. But Muslim League and Congress ministers didn't really constitute a government representing the same interest. So one can't say that cabinet mission plan failure was enough. Many other things happened.
Was it a failure on part of Congress that they gave finance ministry to the Muslim League, of which Liaquat Ali Khan was heading the ministry?
Well, you can say that, because what the finance minister did was that he came up with a budget in which super taxation was imposed on business and industry, and nothing was mentioned about the land question. So obviously it was a slanted budget. It is on that occasion, may I point out, that Nehru was still willing to accept it, because Nehru and part of the interim government was headed by leftists who wanted somehow to work with the Muslim League. But it is Patel then said, we can't work with the Muslim League, we go for partition. So that should be put on record. So it was this is March 1947. Who first accepted the partition proposal. Sorry? It was firstly Sardar Patel who accepted the partition proposal when he said that we should go for partition. Yes. Yeah, in March 1947. Nehru was still willing to accept this budget. Gandhi had also given prime ministership to the Jinnah, but he did not accept that as well. Actually, I have shown that there was an offer from Gandhiji, but it was never conveyed to Jinnah. What happened was that this was conveyed by Gandhiji to the cabinet mission, that you can make Quaid-e-Azam the prime minister and he can choose his own cabinet. He can choose it only from the Muslim League. So we will accept it. But this, I've gone through the cabinet mission plan. Jinnah was never told about this. So it was the British. Yes, one thing, very important, you took it up. Lord Wavell said that I will never accept a government in which Jinnah is the prime minister. He wanted to be the governor general who decided the future of India. This is not mentioned by others. So there was an offer, but the offer did never reach to Mr. Jinnah. Yes, that's correct. And I tell you, Jinnah would never have accepted it. Because he was adamant on Pakistan. No. Yes. From 1940, I have noted 1939, 37, 39 onwards, several times. Who offered this? Subhash Chandra Bose offered this in 1938. Then many other Congress leaders also offered it. Ambedkar has also once put this proposal forward. I think maybe he would have done, but ultimately Ambedkar changed his position. That's a different story. Yeah, that's a different. That would be long. After the partition, do you think that India and Pakistan did not handle the Kashmir issue well? Of course, they did not. Absolutely correct. The poor Kashmiris have been a victim of these two states, conflicting national interests. It's a blame game. If you listen to the Pakistan story, they say that the Indians are responsible. If you listen to what the Indians say, you have to be convinced that the Pakistanis made many important wrong judgments. Let me give you one case, which for you being a Kashmiri is most important. K.H. Khurshid, was Pakistan's. Uh, he was Jinnah Saab's private secretary. He was a Kashmiri, okay, probably from Jammu or Kashmir Valley, who became the private secretary of Quaid-e-Azam in 1944 and remained so till September 1947, even after Pakistan had come into being. He also served as the president of Pakistani Azad Kashmir. I've gone through his book and the book by Chaudhry Muhammad Ali, who was Pakistan's prime minister in 1955 for a year. Okay? Both their books suggest that Patel had offered to Pakistan, keep Kashmir, but do not create problem for us in Hyderabad.
There's actually Sikandar Hayat Khan in his book as well. He's telling us that he was ready to give Kashmir for Hyderabad, but Jinnah had not agreed it.
Yes, in Pakistan, nobody has ever talked about it. In my book, it is out and everybody is quiet because I've given them such sources which they cannot deny. And there was an offer, but once the war started and people were killed on both sides, then that's how
and then things started to go one way or the other.
Yes, that's correct.
My last question, as I am running terribly out of the time. After the birth of Bangladesh in 1971, do you think that the Jinnah's two-nation theory is dead?
Well, it's a very touchy question. In one way, yes, absolutely. Because once the Hindus and Sikhs were gone, the Muslims together could not agree on how to run Pakistan. And let me say, the Muslim League feared in a united India that Hindus being the majority will dominate. Now in Pakistan, the Punjabis and others feared that the Bengalis being a majority, even if they are Muslims, will dominate. So in both cases, they didn't accept the democratic process and Pakistan was broken up. And maybe one can say that this proves that the two-nation theory was flawed. But, the Pakistanis would say Bangladesh came into being, but it didn't re-merge into the Indian Bengal. So it's half proven, half not proven. It's very complicated when we look at all these things. There are many complications.
Professor Ishtaq, pleasure talking to you. Thank you. Please subscribe to our channel Reportage and press the bell icon to remain updated.